So there was just this whole world of people, and I wanted to know more. I was hungry. So my idea was, well, there's no information about this. There's nothing published. Why don't I start a newsletter, a magazine?
Off-Gassing, a scuba podcast with host Nick Hogel. I'm willing to make a bet you can guess what magazine my next guest started. Michael Menduno, known by many as M2, has had quite the impact in the scuba diving world. Have you heard of technical diving? In this episode, I get a chance to sit down with Michael and hear about his exit from the tech world to becoming one of the most well-known diving journalists of our time. How his curiosity of the deep helps him create a meeting place for early technical divers to share their stories and exchange ideas. And his current role as co-founder and editor-in-chief of InDepth, the online scuba diving magazine. Michael, how are you doing this morning?
Doing really well. Good to see you, Nick. Good to talk to you.
Yeah. Super good to meet you. So you are in the Southern California area?
Correct. Yep. In Palm Springs, the desert. We call it the desert. Yep.
Lovely area. It does get hot. I lived in Big Bear Lake for a little bit, so I do know the area a little bit. My aunt used to live in Palm Springs, but yeah, either way, she had a Thai restaurant, so a long time ago. But yeah, so I've been there very little bit, but Southern California I know pretty well. So on the show today, I usually start with the question, tell me about how and why you got into diving, that first experience underwater, that first breath. Was it just love at first breath, or was it, what is this whole thing called scuba diving?
Okay. So I grew up, I was always a water baby, swimming in the pool from early age. I guess I always wanted to learn to dive. I grew up watching Jacques Cousteau and Sea Hunt, the show Sea Hunt and all that. So, but it wasn't until I came out to California to go to graduate school at Stanford that I was, got the notion, hey, I can go learn to dive. There's an ocean nearby. I remember my first breath underwater. It was at Rowley's Scuba, I think in Redwood City. And it was on a regulator in the pool, and it was just magic. It was like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing in the world. And, I never looked back. So that was, I don't even want to say when that was because it'll reveal my very old age. But it was a long time ago. It was in the 70s, 1976. I got certified in 1976. So it's a ways.
How's the water there? Is it pretty cold in Redwood City?
Northern California. Well, this was the pool, but then we did all our open water dives over in Monterey, Cannery Row. Okay. I can remember my scuba instructor, were there and rented 7 mil wetsuits, freezing our ass off. I think it was winter, actually. And, the visibility, there's one place called Breakwater where they take all the students, the visibility by the time you get classes there is like a foot. And I can remember my instructor saying, it gets better than this. It really does, And he was right. It really does. So I stuck with it, and that was my entry into diving.
Okay, so there must have been definitely a draw there. So were you just continuing courses? Like, talk about your progression. I guess I want to say into technical.
Yeah. So at that time, it was kind of in segments. So that initial time, I got very into diving. I got my kind of kept doing classes. I got up to my PADI Dive Master class, but then I went away for a while on an internship to Washington, D.C. The grad school had a cooperative arrangement with the Congress, actually. So I went and worked in the Senate for a few years and then ended up coming back to Silicon Valley, working in high tech. So I got involved. There was a group called Cordell Expeditions. It was a bunch of software engineers who bought a boat. They were all scuba divers. And so they were doing these citizen science, bioassays of the deep seamounts off the coast of Northern California, Big Sur, etc. And they had this project. They were looking for volunteers. It was to do deco diving, which at the time was, like the D word, we call it, the 4-letter word. You should never do decompression diving. So that was going on. And it was deeper. It was, I think we were at 50 meters. So deeper than 30 meters, 40 meters, which you should never, there's nothing to see below 40 meters. That's what they'd say back then. So it was a bit out there. You had to qualify for the dives, get your doubles and all that. And I did. And we went and did these dives. And the practices back then were pretty poor. I mean, we didn't have oxygen or any gas for decompression. We were just on U.S. Navy air tables, et cetera. But still, it was just magical. It got me, it's like, man, this is the greatest thing. And so my first instinct was to research and write about it. I wanted to be a writer. I ended up doing this story and no one would publish it. I mean, I took it to every English-speaking dive magazine and they said, oh, you can't do that. You're not supposed to be at 50 meters. You're not supposed to do decompression diving. And eventually I got a guy, Ken Loyce from Discover Diving, and they agreed to run the story. It was my first published story, and with all sorts of caveats and warnings and sport divers should never do this, etc. But that got me going. And what I learned from that was that there are all these groups secretly doing these deep dives in the East Coast. There were the wreck divers on the Doria and places like that. In cave country, people were doing cave dives. Most cave dives are in Florida anyway, are decompression dives, etc. So there was just this whole world of people, and I wanted to know more. I was hungry. So my idea was, there's no information about this. There's nothing published. Why don't I start a newsletter, a magazine, to talk about this? And that was the birth of AquaCorps. I started it in 1989, and I put out my first issue at DEMA, the Diving Equipment Marketing Association, the annual trade show, in 1990. In those days, DEMA was in January, first month of the year. So in January 1990, I had my first issue of AquaCorps called Under Pressure, and I had all these signs, do you do deep diving? Do you do decompression diving? And at DEMA, and we kicked off. So I remember a contingent from Patty, led by Al Hornsby, who was then a vice president, came and they looked at the signs kind of with wide eyes, and they started picking up the magazine and, it was talking about deep diving and decompression diving, and kind of stormed off. And, that was kind of my launch of AquaCorps.
When you published your first story, was that something that was just kind of a hobby that you've always wanted to do, was write? Or how did you just decide?
I was kind of going through a midlife crisis. I was in the IT, in the high tech world. So I was working for a company called Timeshare, which was the predecessor of the internet. They had a network service called TimeNet and cloud computing. It was the predecessor of cloud computing. So I was working for them, but I had this desire. I was kind of going through a midlife crisis, and I wanted to become a writer. That was my desire. And diving was happening at the same time. So my writing life and my diving life kind of coincided. I kind of started my journalist career in diving. So I'm a dive journalist from my origins, I guess you'd say. So
that's awesome. So I started this podcast, and it for various reasons. I mean, when we all get on the dive boat or the dive site, we just love meeting other people, right, chatting with dive buddies. And I was like, man, I do enjoy writing, but I don't know if I have the self-confidence yet to publish anything. But I was thinking about doing some stuff for my website. I'm like, oh, this would be really cool. But then there's just so many good writers out there, and I'm like, I don't know what I should do. But no, that's awesome that you found it and you're like, man, I want to do this. Let's go for it. And then to bring it back forward a little bit, so at that DEMA show, the Patty people just kind of stormed off. How was the reception to AquaCorps in the beginning years? Were people drawn to it? I'm sure there was a small crowd, but how did it eventually grow to what it became?
Right. So definitely there was an interest because, again, there were all these groups doing diving beyond the limits, or what the limits of the time were, and experimenting, right, with deep air diving and other things. And mixed gas was just starting off pretty much in the cave country. Mixed gas, accelerated decompression, etc. So those are the things we talked about in Aquacore. In fact, our lead article was a piece by Dr. Bill Hamilton, a famous, the late Dr. Bill Hamilton, a famous diving physiologist who was instrumental in the tech community, helping us get tables and kind of transition to mixed gas technology. Because really what was happening, and coming out of the computer industry, it was really clear to me, it was a technological revolution happening in diving, right? Mixed gas technology had been around for 60 years. I mean, the military developed mixed gas, helium diving, mixed gas technology to be able to go deeper because of the limits of air, right? Narcosis and oxygen toxicity. Then in the 1960s, the commercial divers picked it up as oil field diving got deeper and deeper and started, going beyond 60 meters, 200 feet. Deep air diving just wasn't working very well, so they cut over to mix. And then finally, really it started in the cave community, but people were pushing beyond the limits of air. And so they then went to mixed gas diving, trimix diving. And so that's really what was happening. That's what technical diving was all about, right? It was the mixed gas diving revolution. So it was an exciting time. Rebreathers weren't on the market yet, and we really needed to get mixed gas together before we moved on to rebreathers, which are sort of the ultimate mixed gas, platform, really. I got off track. Our lead story at the time was from Bill Hamilton called Call It High-Tech Diving. We didn't know what to call it back then in the early days. So it was high-tech diving, or I was calling it, professional sport diving. We didn't know what to call tech diving until a few years later, when I came up with the term technical diving, which came out of rock climbing, actually. There was already a thing called technical climbing, right? People climbing rock faces, and you could rate the faces and all that. And it just sort of had the right ring to it. So I used it in my magazine, Aquacore, and sister publication, Technical Diver. And it stuck, actually. And Patty was instrumental in helping it to stick. At that time, there was a lot of interest in this, you asked. So on the one hand, people interested in this, there's a lot of interest. At the same time, there was a lot of pushback because the recreational industry had built itself on there's nothing to see below 130 feet, and you should never do decompression diving. So that was the whole premise of recreational diving, and we were beyond that. People were pretty upset at the time, some of the industry. And that's why we ended up with a new name, calling it technical diving, because they didn't want any part of us. Like, they're not with us, And the fear was that many people would die and the government would step in and start regulating diving. The dive industry, the sport diving industry, had an exemption from OSHA, which regulates the Office of Safety and Health Administration. They regulate the workplace. So Scuba has an exemption. And the fear was, if we did not have a good safety record, the government would step in and start regulating diving.
Where did you go after, or what happened after Aquacore?
So I published Aquacore for 6 years. We added the tech conference. The idea was to, make the magazine live. So I launched the first tech conference in 1993. We had Tech 93, 94, 95, 96. I also started the first rebreather forum because we were all interested in getting rebreather technology, but it wasn't available. So we put together kind of an industry meeting to talk about rebreathers, how we can get them, et cetera, et cetera. So that started that. But then by that point, I kind of ran out of money. A bunch of things happened. We grew. We went newsstand, which is horrible for cash flow. And I basically went out of business in 1996. Very sad. Right about the time when, the tech really started taking off and rebreathers were just around the corner. So, and then I took a hiatus for quite a while until 2010, when I got back into diving, and it was like, oh my God, I can't believe that I ever left, and kind of restarted my latest efforts as a writer, and then starting a new magazine called InDepth, which I started 5 years ago, which is sort of the Aquacore of the 21st century.
Yeah, no, I really, really enjoy InDepth every time. I want to say I don't, maybe 2020 is when I started subscribing to it online. So no, I absolutely enjoy it. That's why I was really excited to have you on here. If you don't mind me asking, why the hiatus? Why the step back from diving?
It got to the point it was just running the business and we were growing and we were having money problems and it was just very stressful. And I'm not really a business. I'm not really. I'm not a business person at all. I'm an artist. And so it's just very stressful. But through Aquacore, I met people at Wired Magazine, Scientific American, outside. So when Aquacore closed, I spent about 6 months trying to get money for it. I pitched it to Patty for Patty to buy Aquacore in the tech conference to John Cronin, actually. He was still with us then. And they didn't want to. Probably good. It worked out. Anyway, so I don't know. I was just burned out and needed a vacation. And then I started, writing and went back into high tech. So, but every year, my cave instructor, a guy named Steve Gerard, I got cave certified in 1990, would call me up and say, Mike, come on down to Mexico and go diving. And every year I would politely blow him off. And then finally in 2010, he said, look, if you don't come down this year, I'm not going to call you anymore. I'm not going to bother you. I'll just let you be. So I thought, okay, I'll come down. And I hadn't been diving for, 10 years, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And so I came down there and I thought, we'll start off, with singles in the ocean and then kind of work our way in the caves. He goes, forget that. You're a cave diver. And so we just went cave diving. My first dive in 10 years, cave diving. And of course, Mexico's pretty benign. But and it was like, why did I ever leave? This is so cool. So that kind of got me started back on the path. And been in diving and publishing ever since. So, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your cave training. How was all you did that all in Mexico?
Well, so I my certification actually was in Florida. So I got certified in Florida and then made it down to Mexico. My instructor, Steve Gerard, who's retired now from diving, but a controversial, well-known figure in Mexico and other places, then moved to Mexico. So I followed him down there.
Oh, okay.
Cave divers to me were whereas the wreck divers, with the hammers and chisels and saws were kind of the wreckers. The cave divers were really the philosophers, and I was always really respectful of cave diving, really excited to get cave certified. And, really back in the day, we'd say, if you want to be a tech diver, you should take a cave diving class, just even if you don't want to cave dive, just for your experience, because they had it pretty well together, right? They had the configuration sorted out. Mixed gas technology really started in the cave community because of the ease of caves, right? You can stage gas along the way. It's easier operationally. So they were really the first ones to start using mixed gas, and that eventually then led to tech diving and the mixed revolution, if you will. So
when you picked diving back up, were you continuing with your courses or training, or were you just kind of like?
Well, so I got back to diving, and that's when I kind of hooked up with Global Underwater Explorers, GUE. So I took Fundies, which is their fundamental class that leads to all places. And Fundies teaches, buoyancy and trim and, basic deco procedures and all that good stuff. So then after that, I sort of continued on the GUE. Well, I went back and forth because I also went to rebreathers then. I got certified on the Inspiration. I think I did that first, actually. I went to rebreathers. I participated in Rebreather Forum 3, which was held in 2012. I had done the first two, and then this one was 10 years later in 2012. And after that, I got into GUE and started doing the GUE training. So I'm a GUE tech diver. And the magazine really came out of GUE. Jared Jablonski, the founder and president, and I had been old friends, and we started talking about the idea of kind of resurrecting what Aquacore was, a magazine for the whole community, that helped us push the envelope. I mean, Aquacore is devoted to improving safety and performance. That's everything, right? Safety and performance so we could go deeper and stay longer, right? That's the whole history of diving. Go deeper, stay longer. Anyway, we started talking, and so then in January of 2019, we ended up launching InDepth. And the idea of it was that it was GUE's give back to the tech community and really a magazine for everyone. GUE has a membership magazine called Quest for GUE members. But again, this InDepth was going to be for everybody. So we've been just slowly growing it. These last, we're in our 5th year now. So,
like I said, I really, really enjoy every time it comes out, and you definitely put a lot of different articles out there. So it's definitely, there's the tech side of it, but then I feel like there's a lot more to it. So I definitely think it is a magazine for anybody that's into diving.
it's for, mission-oriented diving professionals, instructors, people in the business. It's for people who care about diving in a deep way.
No, I actually just reached out to an instructor. So I don't know if I'm based in Malaysia right now, and I reached out to an instructor in Singapore about doing a fundamentals class. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not the I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of 2 tanks on my back. I feel like, okay, older, but I definitely think it's a good skill set to have.
Yeah.
And I'm slowly venturing into the technical world. Obviously, it's not a big rush or anything, but yeah, I'm very much looking forward to. I haven't set a date or anything, but it's definitely in the cards for the future. So,
and you can do fundies in singles too. I mean, you can do it in singles or doubles. People who want to get into tech, of course, do it in doubles, because that's, eventually, if you're going to get into tech, you're going to need more than one tank, right?
Yeah.
Basically.
No, for sure. So are you still, what rebreather are you diving currently?
So currently, I still the Inspiration, but the Liberty. I have a DiveSoft Liberty computer rebreather, which I like very much. Yeah, it's a really good unit, I think. I mean, there are a lot of good rebreathers out there, but the Liberty is certainly one of those. Yeah.
So I just took my advanced nitrox decompression procedures class a few months back, and so now I'm kind of on the rebreathers are in my sights.
Yep.
I mean, what is your thoughts on open circuit mixed gas diving? Do you think that's going to kind of go away with? What are your thoughts on that?
A big driver right now is helium prices. We are in what the gas industry calls helium shortage 4.0. It's a situation where helium prices are very high. There are big reserves. There's exploration going on. There are huge reserves in Russia, which is problematic, and those wells are down now. They're not operating, and of course, with the war, Russia's sort of a pariah now. So it's unclear when those supplies are going to get to market. So that is driving people to rebreathers, because to do a deep dive, you're going to spend $300, $400, $500 on gas for a set of doubles. I'm sure in Malaysia, helium's quite expensive all over the world. We did a piece not too long ago. In fact, we repushed it out today, called "The Price of Helium is Up in the Air," and it looks at helium around the world and the shortage. So that's not going to change. So I think it's going to continue to push people to rebreathers. Basically, if you want to deep dive or do very long dives, you need a rebreather because of gas efficiency. It's just like that. And the prices are still high though. That's the biggest limiting factor. I mean, you're going to spend, $8,000 to $12,000 on a rebreather, and then you got to get trained, and so it costs some money, but in the long run, if you're going to do deep diving, it'll pay for itself. We had an article, someone figuring if you're going to do 40 dives to, say, 50 meters and get trained for that on open circuit, you're better off just going to closed circuit. It'll pay for itself in gas savings.
Being in the position that I'm in right now, it's a tough one, because I'm just kind of in the reading, studying phase of rebreathers, and there is a lot of rebreathers. There's a lot of good rebreathers on the market, so it's like,
yep.
Why choose this one as opposed to that one? Or, and so I've been talking to a few different people about, what I think would be the best choice for me. But I think my next goal is to just try a few different units and just see what the deal is. And actually, I just thought of this question I wanted to ask a little bit earlier. What are your thoughts on, because I feel technology is becoming a lot more involved with diving, and I feel like there's I don't want to say this old school approach, that I think that's the wrong word for it, but how do you feel about technology in diving? So some people are opposed to it, some people are for it. Like never use a transmitter, never gonna do it. Some people are like love them. Just the like modern technology incorporated in diving. What are your thoughts on that?
And it's interesting because GUE overall over the years has been very, not really for dive computers in the early days, not for rebreathers and the kind of keep it simple, stupid approach, right? Diving tables, etc. I think it's changed though. Take any of these things. Dive computers have gotten super reliable. Rebreathers, where 20 years ago, I can remember I would get about half my dives. I had to either call or we never got in the water because of problems with the early rebreathers, but that's not the case anymore. So I think we're moving more towards acceptance of technology. That said, though, there's a whole movement of manually controlled closed circuit rebreathers, which are very popular. That really came out of the sport diving world. I mean, military divers don't dive with manual closed circuit rebreathers. We do. So there's that movement. But I think there's generally more acceptance of technology, and we need it to go underwater. And even the no technology people, the free divers who run me. I'm thinking the free divers, they're the latest group now to go to mixed gas diving. Technical freediving, right? Pre-breathe nitrox and then hold your breath because you can stay down longer and you're presumably safer because you're less likely to go hypoxic. So technology is going to be with us as long as we want to go underwater, and we're going to need it, to keep going.
So I haven't been diving for very long in the whole big picture. My first dive was in 2016, so very, very new in the big picture of things. And I feel that when I've started and going through my courses, technology, computers, there's some really nice computers out there, transmitters, things like that. Even the lights that are coming out, just the non-corded, and so I'm just kind of, so going and taking training or courses, some instructors are all for it, some are not for it, and I'm like, it's kind of hard. What do I do? Because why am I not going to use this light that is really good? People are, I don't want to say promoting it, but promoting it, so I'm just like, what do I do? So it's kind of a tough thing to navigate these days, because a lot of really skilled people that have been in the business for a long time, I want to learn and soak everything up from them, but then they're just like, SPGs, you got to use these. And I'm like, well, my transmitter hasn't failed me yet. So, but yet, I mean, I don't know. So, no, I was just curious about that, because it's kind of a common question I've been asking a lot of people, like, well, what are your thoughts on technology and stuff? And then I'll bring it back just a little bit. So you started Key West Divers, is that correct?
Yep. It was the first tech diving center in the world. There was a guy named Captain Billy Deans. He had a dive center, Key West Diver, longtime diver, spear fisherman, and deep diver. And him and his best friend, John Ormsby, went on the Andrea Doria in 1986. And John ended up, they were diving on separate teams, but John ended up diving by himself, getting tangled in the wreck and dying. And Billy ended up recovering his body. And in fact, well, I'll tell you this. So, and in fact, they videoed the recovery. So park that for a second. Anyway, after that, Billy decided there's got to be a better way to do this. And, people were getting bent and there were, fatalities on the Doria. So he got involved in mixed gas. He started learning mixed gas diving. He hooked up with Dr. Bill Hamilton, who had been helping some of the cave community people like Bill Stone and Sheck Exley to get tables, and basically set up the first helium diving training program in Key West. There wasn't even a course for it yet. IANTD had not really been set up yet. So you'd basically come down and just apprentice with Billy. You'd learn how to mix gas. You'd learn how to carry stage bottles. And you learn, how we did what we did. That kind of got it started. So, and it was really a mecca for tech diving around the world. I mean, people all around the world came to train with Billy and kind of learn his methods. And they would bring ideas with them, like doing this or doing that. I remember it was a big information exchange in those days in the community as we taught ourselves how to do trimix diving,
In all of your years, who would you say had the biggest impact on you in diving? Like the most influential? I mean, from the beginning till yesterday, this morning, is there a person that you can say
God,
that's
so many people. Well, I've had I've just been, I'm really grateful and have been fortunate to be in this position to get to work with and know and write stories with some of the top the top people, the Sheck Exleys, Dr. Bill Hamilton. There was a guy, Lad Handelman, who actually helped me get Aquacore together. He was the founder of Oceaneering. He's passed now, but himself, Phil Newton, Billy Deans, Bill Stone. I mean, it goes on. I just feel really grateful to be in this position of getting to know some of these people and all. We have such an extraordinary community of people, our pioneers who have think how far diving has come in 30 years since the 1980s when 40 meters was the limit and no D was the thing you did. Now people are diving to beyond 200, pushing 250 meters in cave dives, 12-hour dives, deep shipwrecks. I mean, we're really, and rebreathers have become the platform of choice. So you've really taken it to an amazing level. I mean, Richard Harris, Dr. Harry, the guy who saved the Thai kids, the anesthesiologist, he just did the world's first hydrogen dive on a rebreather at 230 meters in Pierce Resurgence Cave, with the idea that this might be the technology to allow people to now explore from the 250 meter to the 350 meter range. So, 800 plus feet to over 1,000 feet. That is kind of the new range. It's not everyone's doing that. It's just the very uber few. Just the very top. But it's our community doing that. So it's just amazing. Yeah.
Out of all the type of dives that you mentioned, what's an ideal day of diving for you? Like, what's just I'm gonna go out and have a fun day.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a rebreather, single tank, free dive. What is it?
I've gotten to the point now where just being in. I mean, I was swimming this morning. Just being in the water is good. So I mean, I love it all. I tend to. I found in my advancing years that warmer water seems really nicer to me now, and clearer water seems really nicer to me now. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I love cave diving. I love cave diving. I'm thinking right now it'd be great to be in Mexico and go cave diving today, but that's good. But then you have the ocean too. So I really like it all. There's not one thing I like to do, and I'm kind of a guy who likes variety. So. I need a little of everything, but any dive would be good right now. So, yeah.
That's awesome. No, I think at heart I want warm water. I haven't been in super cold water, and I've been in caverns, not caves. But I definitely am looking into the overhead environment. I did an advanced rec course, and that was a lot of fun.
Yep.
And I plan to go back to Mexico to do some my cave training. So yeah, it's definitely in the cards. It's just a matter of time. So
it's beautiful. It's such a beautiful environment. So different, and it's like going to another world. I mean, being underwater is sort of another world, but caves are just remarkable and unique. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you get much diving in Southern California over there?
Yeah. I do Catalina, and out here is great diving. Though the last year or two, just with travel, I probably dive more other places than I've dived locally. Go figure, but yeah.
And then I was also reading you play music.
I do. My bass is over here. I'm a bass player. Yes, love music. Yeah, so I play electric bass. My preferred is a 5-string fretless bass, fretless electric. I play jazz, blues, rock. I read, so I really enjoy doing shows. Are fun, and I haven't been very active playing in the last few years, just because since the pandemic, really, well, all the gigs went away. but I've been more focused on journalism, on the magazine and that stuff. So, but I'm sure it'll come back around. Yeah.
Yeah. Who's your top bassist? Who would you have to? Who
Oh
would you name?
God. There's again so many.
I can only think of like one or two. I can only think one right now off the top of my head. I know doesn't Les Claypool plays a
Les Claypool,
fretless
yeah, know
bass.
him. Yep, Jaco Pastorius. God, just yeah, lots of people. So
Yeah, I've seen Claypool play a long time ago, long time ago, and there was a band. Who was it? He was with. You ever heard of Oysterhead?
no, Oysterhead. Huh? No, I haven't.
It's Les Claypool. I want to say Stuart Copeland on drums, and then Trey Anastasio from Fish on guitar.
Oh wow.
It's a cool little band. You should check them out sometime.
Yeah,
I mean,
I will.
I think they maybe put out 2 albums, but yeah, Claypool. I've seen him, and he always puts on a really
Nice,
good show. I
nice.
mean, it's been years since I've seen him.
Are you a player as well? Do you play music?
No. I used to go to a lot of concerts when I was younger, and so I've seen a lot of different, just bassists, musicians, and so yeah, there's always just a few that stuck out from me. And I just remembered when you said fretless, I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure Les Claypool plays
Yeah.
a fretless bass, and he puts on an amazing show. Like his stage presence is just absolutely phenomenal. Like you can't sit down at one of his
Yeah,
shows. So
nice. Yeah.
have you ever been to the Austin, Texas? There's like a pretty big music scene
I
down
have,
there. don't
yeah.
know if
I was there for a business conference, I don't know, a while back ago. And yeah, the music scene there was amazing. It was before the pandemic, too. So yeah, music everywhere. It was really fun. Yep.
So what advice, as someone that's been in the journalism world, scuba journalism, what advice would you have for a small but up and coming podcast to try to get out there and get those interviews, and what advice could you give basically to me?
Yeah. Think big. Go. Follow your passion. Go talk to the people that get you inspired and that want to talk to. For myself, I tend to try to do the things that get me excited, that get me inspired, the people that I'm amazed by, and that's sort of my criteria for going after things. So I would say the same. Follow your passion. The things that get you excited will get other people excited. So, go that route. Social media, I think, is becoming really important. I just added a marketing and sales director to InDepth, and the first thing she's done is really put us big time on social media, and I can see already the circulation climbing. So I would say for a podcast as well, if you're out there, so people can find you, because there's a lot of noise out there, as with everything coming at us 24/7. Yeah, getting out there. I'll add you to our podcast story in InDepth so people can find you that way and add a link. So
Yeah, no, that would be amazing. I'm definitely not gonna lie, the social media, because I've never been great at it. So I'm like, okay, I gotta definitely learn this side of it and the whole marketing side. So, but no, it's been a lot of fun so far. I've really gotten some cool interviews. I actually was able to do an interview with Bill Stone, which was awesome. Did an interview with Richard Pyle. I actually reached out to Jared. I feel like I'm gonna butcher his last name. Jablonski. Is that how you say it?
Jablonski, yep.
Jablonski. Yeah, I reached out to him. He replied, but I mean, a lot of people, they're just super busy running around the world. So
he's traveling right now.
Yeah,
I think he's in Brazil or somewhere. Yeah, Indonesia.
Yeah, so he's like, oh, but he replied, which was really cool, and so it's really cool to kind of like what you were saying, just meet these big figures, these knowledgeable people, and just kind of pick their brain a little bit and just get to know, like, oh man, here's a question that I have for you, or just it's just nice because even though I'm not on a boat with them or at the dive site, it's kind of like diving brings this community together, this group of people together. So it's just super awesome. So do you have any big trips planned for the future? What's your next big trip planned?
Right now is kind of a quiet year, but the big trips, I'm going to go to Dive Talks in the fall. I'm going to actually go to the DiveSoft Liberty Summit. They bring all their instructors and ambassadors together. We're going to meet in Malta, and then I'm going to go off to Dive Talks and give a presentation at Dive Talks, my first time there, in Portugal, Lisbon. So I'm looking forward to that. And then, of course, DEMA will be in New Orleans this year, so that will be exciting. And we have the GUE's 25th anniversary in a conference right the weekend before DEMA. So those are some of the things I'm going to do. And I'm hoping to get back to Mexico for some diving sometime soon. So
when you go to these conferences, do you try to get some diving in, or is it just mostly business?
Depending where. Like Lisbon, I'm definitely going to, or New Orleans for DEMA is not. But the GUE conference, they'll have, I'll probably go a week early and do some cave. It's in High Springs, and they'll have Cave Fest, so I'll probably do that. And then DEMA, though, in New Orleans, there won't be any diving. But
awesome, man, awesome. And then last question before I let you go. Any top, what would you say the top tier of your diving has been? Like, is there any standout moments that have just like, man, that was the one?
Certainly some cave dives. I mean, I've had some memorable cave. Well, both. Again, just when you asked me that, I go, oh yeah, cave. Oh yeah, but then there's the Wilkes-Barre. I remember that. But then there's that deep wall in Bonaire. So yeah, so nothing stands out. I mean, it's being in that beautiful environment with people you care about. I mean, diving is, for me, it's a very social activity too, like being with your friends and being able to share some of these incredible places, be it Poor Knights Island in New Zealand or Eagle's Nest Cave in Florida or, the Wilkes-Barre shipwreck, something cool like that. So
what's the Wilkes-Barre shipwreck?
Oh, the Wilkes-Barre. That's more of an historical wreck. That's in Key West. That was Billy Dean's, our key training wreck, down to about, I think to the sand, it was 265 feet. So, 70 plus meters.
Oh, wow.
And nice. And the smokestack came up to 90 feet. So you had a lot of relief and, some fun stuff. So back from my youth, I remember that still fondly. And then Cozumel. Cozumel's one of my favorite places. That's another.
Oh, okay. Cool. Cozumel's nice. I've been there a couple times, and yeah, definitely, because I moved to Malaysia from Austin, Texas, so Cozumel is pretty much the backyard over there. You're just a couple hour flight from Austin right down into Mexico. So, I really, really do enjoy. I mean, that whole area is beautiful. Cozumel, Tulum, Playa. It's a good time. Good food, good diving. I mean, you really can't go wrong.
We did these fun dives last year. We did this. I'd never done this before. This was memorable. It was a tech dive, but drift tech dive. So you barrel down the wall. We were breathing Trimix and stage bottles, and then you just basically ride your way up and do all your deco just drifting. It was just a blast. It was really, and the currents are up and down, so it was challenging. It was just a lot of fun. So
awesome, man, awesome. Well, Michael, thank you very, very much for coming on to the show. I really, really appreciate it, and I really hope to be able to meet up with you in the future and just hang out, actually meet you face to face. So thank you once again for coming on to the show.
Thank you. It was really good to be here, Nick. Thanks so much.
Offgassing, a scuba podcast.